Hi, and welcome to the KindlED podcast, where we dig into the art and science behind kindling the motivation, curiosity, and mental well being of the young humans in our lives.
Together, we'll discover practical tools and strategies you can use to help kids unlock their full potential and become the strongest version of their future selves.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of KindlED. We are super excited for our guest today. Adrian, who are we talking to?
I'm super excited about our guest today. Her name is Janine Halloran. She's a licensed mental health counselor who has been working with children, teens, and their families for over 20 years. She has been helping children and teens build their coping skills throughout her career in a variety of settings, including schools, mental health clinics, and in her private practice. She founded Coping Skills for Kids to help children and teens learn healthy and safe ways to manage big feelings. She has written several books, including the best-selling Coping Skills for Kids workbook, the Coping Skills for Teens workbook, and the Social Skills for Kids workbook. She is also the host of the Calm and Connected podcast and the founder of the Coping Skills Community Hub. Her work has been featured in the Boston Globe, CNN, Huffington Post, and the Skim newsletter. Janine lives in Massachusetts with her husband and her 2 children. We cannot wait to bring her on the show.
Let's do it. Today, we're talking to Janine Halloran, and we're so excited to have you, Janine. Thank you for coming on.
Well, I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so I'd love for you to just kind of back up a little bit. Tell us who you are, your story, what's your background? How did you kind of come into the work that you find yourself doing? And what would you say is like your big why? Like what makes you passionate about it?
I'm a licensed mental health counselor in Massachusetts, and I've been working in a lot of different places over the years as time has gone on. So I've worked in schools, I've worked in community mental health centers. I actually still keep a private practice now, so I have private clients that I see, like I'm seeing somebody today later on. So coping skills is something that I've really always had a passion for. And ever since I was in a school system and my principal asked me, what's the thing that you want our kids to leave school with? What is the thing that you want them to focus on? And it took me a couple minutes and I sat there and I said, I really want them to learn coping skills. Because at this point, I'm working in a 4th and 5th grade school and they are, they're still in their individual classrooms. It's very family feeling. And then they go to middle school and things shift and things get a little bit more challenging and get a little bit more challenging as you go up to high school. So I said I really wanted them to learn coping skills. And it's something actually I was sort of passionate about before, like even just in graduate school, I was just absorbing. I wanted to know all these coping skills. And you learn a few in graduate school. But then I remember that moment when I walked into a classroom for the first time as a school counselor and I was like, well, I have done all the coping skills I know and it is 9:30 and now what do I do? Because they're still freaking out and I still need to figure out what is going to help them as the school counselor. um, so I really started paying attention and wanting to help kids figure out what are those things that work for them, what is going to help them manage their emotions, what's going to help them chill out, what's going to help them relax. So I talked to them and I heard what they had to say. I looked at research, I've tried different things with kids, I've heard from other counselors. So I really started just creating lists and things like that. And then I kept looking for this like coping skills book and I couldn't find it, right? And so my husband finally just turns to me one day and he's like, it doesn't exist. You may write it because it doesn't exist. Like, go ahead and sit down and start doing that work. So, and I was like, okay, I guess that makes sense. I like did it under protest, but here we are. I wrote it as I would want to write it for a school counselor or a therapist or professionals working with kids. And I think that's kind of why it sort of started snowballing because people were looking for that. Like I wasn't the only one looking for that. And so it just coping skills for kids sort of grew organically. And I think my why is I was a kid who struggled in school sometimes, like not academically. Academically, I was fine. Socially, I struggled a little bit. Emotionally, I struggled a little bit. And I saw a therapist who was phenomenal in high school. And I wanted to be able to do the same thing that she did for me, I wanted to do for other kids. So that's why I want to put it out there and put these ideas out. Like some of the strategies are strategies she taught me. Like, that's really cool.
That's awesome. I'm curious, how do you define coping skill?
hmm So when I think about coping skills, I think about it as a way that we deal with big feelings or overwhelming or stressful situations, challenging things that are going on in our lives. And I think about it in terms of like healthy versus unhealthy. So you can have a coping skill, and that your coping skill can be like breaking things. That's unhealthy. Yelling at people, unhealthy, not the greatest way of dealing with your big feelings. But if you can do something that is safe and healthy to cope, that doesn't hurt other people, doesn't hurt yourself, does not damage property, I think we're golden.
Yeah, that's I love that.
When would you say that adults should be teaching these coping strategies to kids?
This sounds kind of weird because whenever I say this, people are always like, "That's so strange." I actually like to do it when they're calm because that is when learning happens. That is when growth can happen. You can't teach somebody when they're in the middle of a challenging situation. If they are like super escalated, that's not the time to try and introduce rainbow grounding. They don't know what that means. They have never heard you say those words before, and it's just going to probably escalate the situation. So I like to practice when kids are calm, and then I like to hear the feedback from them. Like, what did you think about that? Was that cool? Did you like that? Did you not like that? How did that breathing feel? And I will even check in with them like before we do the strategy together and then after we do the strategy together, just so like they have an understanding of like this can be something that can help me relax and calm down. And then I actually also like having visuals so that kids can figure out what they can do. And when those escalated moments when words can't go in, visuals can go in.
So I have a neurodivergent learner or a neurodivergent child. And so we do all the coping skills. That's how I stumbled upon your work. It's like I don't know how much longer I can handle this sensory meltdown because when he was younger, they would last, over an hour or sometimes an hour and a half. And we just could not get him out of his limbic system. And so we had the posters, we had all these tools. And when he was calm, he could totally access those. But in the meltdowns, it was so hard. So, like, how long does that typically take? I guess maybe for a neurotypical kid versus a neurodivergent kid, or like, how do you like help it stick? Like, cause yeah, when they're calm, they know these things, or maybe why is it harder for them to access those tools whenever they are dysregulated?
So I think it's one of those things we have to think about the long term, not the short term when it comes, especially to raising children or working with children. It is hard. I had a kid who was like that too. He's 12 now, and he really struggled a lot when he was little, and meltdowns would last a very long time, and it was hard. But one thing that helped me was to be able to think about it was a marathon, not a sprint. So thinking about long term, like in the moment, I can do something that is going to be helpful to him, even if I see like a tiny bit of a glimmer of something different. Like maybe the meltdown lasted 45 minutes versus an hour. And honestly, that was a win in my book. Like if it's 45 minutes versus an hour, oh my goodness, that is huge.
Oh yeah, that's a big
Right?
win in our well,
It's
now we're down
huge.
to like a few
It's
minutes,
life
which
changing.
is huge celebration, right? Yes. It's taken years to get there, but we're finally here and it's wonderful.
Right, and it's one of those things you have to think about it in terms of the long term, and it's also, like, your own sort of self-talk about it, like, to make sure that you're not getting down on yourself like, "I'm doing something wrong." You're absolutely not doing anything wrong. They're human, just like everybody's human, and it's not gonna stick right away. Like, nobody learns something looks at something and learns something immediately. So you think about it as just like you're learning to read, you're learning to walk, you're learning to cook, you're learning to cope, and you try to figure out what are those things that are going to help stick. So I love visuals. I actually love doing like maybe even social stories that you can read, just ways to continually support the work that you're doing. And what's the other thing I like to do with videos actually of showing them, like having them do practice the coping skill when they're calm and videotaping them and then being able to like put it in a video that they can watch so they can see themselves doing those things and handling big emotions and like handling a situation in a calm way. Like, I am taking my deep breaths, I am taking a drink of water, I am petting my dog. Like, those are the strategies they can use. Something else I like to do is have like a calm down space so that they start to learn that pattern of, I'm having a big emotion, I can go do something, and then I can return. And it's gonna take time. It takes time. It's like it's the most uh it can be so frustrating because you're like, I know, like we just talked about this, and here we are, and it didn't stick, and you feel bad, and you're like, nope, their brain is working, it's working on making new patterns, and it takes a little bit of time to get those new patterns down, and I will not give up. And that's really, it's about like your self-talk.
I never thought about the recording them, but sometimes I will. We have a huge mirror in our hallway, and I'll have them look in the mirror, and then that kind of clicks too. It's like just being able to see it from the outsider's point of view and not be so inward, and that seems to help. So I'm wondering, I actually was just at a micro school recently, and I saw a big mirror on her wall, and it had like phrases around it that were like calming, and it was totally using like these coping skills. I was like, that's so brilliant to have that in the classroom too.
Yeah, I love that. I love the mirror piece of it. Sometimes it just takes a little bit to shift yourself out of it. Honestly, sometimes when my son was little, I would actually take him, like, if we were outside, I'd go inside. If we were inside, I'd go outside. Is that like shift? Yeah, change of environment. That was enough sometimes for him to like come back enough where I could be like, okay, can we talk now?
Yeah, that's huge. I'm curious to know if you work with adults at all developing these, because I don't think we were explicitly taught this when we were growing up necessarily. And so do you interact with a lot of parents or adults that don't know how to manage their emotions? And what do you do in that with them? How do you help them?
So it's interesting that you say that. So, I wrote the coping skills for kids first. And then a lot of people kept talking to me about, like, oh, I really wish that I had this, but my kids are teenagers now. And so I listened, and then I wrote coping skills for teens. And then as soon as I wrote coping skills for teens, everybody was like, this is great. Now you need to write one for adults. And I was like, I will do it. I like it's like percolating. It's in there because it is one of those things. Like, I always talk about with families, like, you you teaching coping skills, like, you also have to model it. So like, if you are flying off the handle and like having big feelings about something and you're not able to handle it in a safe and healthy way, then what are they seeing and what are they learning? And so like then it's like a reflection of like, okay, I was talking to a dad about this the other day. There's nothing more harsh than seeing your own challenges in a little person and then being like, oh, now I have to address that. Now, like, I see what it looks like in that little person, and now I'm going to need to make sure that I take care of it for me. And then we take care of it for them as well. So yeah, I talk with parents about their own strategies as well, and it's on my heart to really think about writing the coping skills for adults book because we need it. We as adults need it. And I sometimes will think about it as like resting or recharging, re-energizing, self-care. Like, I phrase it in lots of different ways, but really what it is trying to figure out my coping skills and using them regularly.
Neuroscience wise, isn't it harder for a child to stay regulated or come to a state of regulation if the adult, and this isn't just a parent, it could be any adult is that is in care of that child. Isn't it harder for their brain to come to a regulated state?
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's this whole phenomenon of co-regulation, and you mirror neurons. Like, you're just doing all this stuff where there's a reason why parenting experts always talk about be the calm, and you have to set the tone. Or I heard somebody once say, be the thermostat, not the thermometer, when you're working with a child. And I really try to live that, and it's actually much easier to do with other people's children. Super, super easy to do with other people's children. And then it's like a lot more self-talk work when you're dealing with your own, because different emotions pop up. But that's really what it is. Like, you stay calm, and then you will exude calm, and the mood is calmer. And then that makes it easier for them to be able to calm down. It's tricky because like we get a lot of emotions. We have our own experiences and childhoods and things that we're dealing with. And sometimes things are like it's hard for us. We haven't worked through that yet. And so then we're like, ooh, that's rough. I don't really like that. You know?
Yes, absolutely. So I love in your book how you break it down by styles. So could you go over the 5 types of coping styles that you share?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So this came about sort of naturally as I was working with a group of tweens. It was one of those things where you come out of graduate school and you get really excited because you've got like this list of 101 ways to cope, right? And I had this girl like dead look me in the eye, and she was like, "This is too many. I don't know what to do." And I was like, "That's fair. That's fair." So we started breaking it down. So I think about it in terms of relaxation. So those are the things that are like deep breathing, grounding techniques, mindfulness, progressive muscle relaxation. That's all in the relaxation section. In distraction, it's really about play and fun activities because play is a natural stress reliever for kids. Unstructured play is amazing and we should do more of it. So I really like to be able to include that and know that that is actually well spent downtime when kids play. Then I talk about movement because, especially when you have a lot of big emotions in your body, you need to get it out in a way that feels safe and healthy and is not like punching somebody else. So, like moving your body in big ways, like running, jumping, taking a walk, or moving your body in small ways, like squeezing something. And then I sort of separate out sensory, especially like as a parent of a sensory child. Like, I know that it really does make a difference. Like, there are certain things that he really loves. And my best friend is an OT, and we've talked about this like around and around a lot, just about the sensory sort of kids using their senses, and not only their sense of like seeing, hearing, tasting, but also like where they are in space, using their sense of balance, that sort of thing. So using calming jars, squeezing their bodies, those sorts of swinging, those sorts of interactions that will help them calm down. And then processing is really about, what am I feeling? Being able to label their feelings, being able to make a plan for the next time, being able to figure out what they can and can't control, and understanding where they feel things in their body. So it's really, that's more of the process. Like, we're thinking through, we're making a plan, we're talking about it, we're identifying it, we're trying to make sure that we can know what to do the next time.
I love this because every single child is so unique. And so one strategy might work for one, but not another. With my son, his psychologist helped us discover different ways of when his heart rate will actually come down. And she said it's really interesting if he is standing up, his heart rate will just stay up. Like he cannot get to homeostasis. So for him, we discovered that he has to either lay flat on his back or at least be sitting down. And I didn't even think of that. I was like, oh, well, if anyone should just be able to calm down if they do deep breathing or if they do that. But actually, she's like, nope, for him, this is what works. And that was really enlightening for us to realize that, okay, what works for him to calm down is going to work differently for our youngest child or our oldest child. And, when you have a classroom of 30 different nervous systems and 30 different kids that have just so many unique ways, different tools and things that will work for them. I love how you break it down into the different styles so that you can really pick the right one that works for that individual body. And it might take, some trial and error, right?
Yes, absolutely. Raising two kids myself, I have a kid who's like, my daughter loves relaxation. I mean, she is all about it. And distraction, but distraction in terms of like drawing, writing, painting, that kind of thing. My son, movement and sensory all day long. I mean, in utero, this child. That's what he is. And I love the fact that you are able to pick and choose what works for you. And I love for your son that people are paying attention to like what his heart rate is doing and what is working for him. Because again, like deep breathing is amazing, mindfulness is amazing, but is it the right strategy that works for him, and in what way? Like, where can he be, what should he be doing? I love that. That's exactly what we should be doing when we're looking at coping skills. Everybody's different and everybody's going to cope differently, and it's going to impact our bodies differently.
So, developmentally, when do you see how old is what I'm asking? How old does a child typically have to be before you would start addressing some of these things and like can I start with a 3-year-old, a 4-year-old? Like, what do you recommend?
So I would say you can start in preschool just in terms of like being able to label feelings. Because when you label your feeling, it's easier to be able to self regulate. Lots of research around that. And you can start when they are little and you can start with like happy, mad, sad. Like, really, you can start that basic. And there's lots of great books and TV shows that are very emotion driven that you can use in order to just spark a conversation about it. So, especially for little ones, I've been really getting back into elephant and piggy books. Do you know those books, Moella?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Oh my gosh, Pigeon is outrageous.
It's got a lot of anger.
He's got big feelings, Pigeon. And that's a great way to start having conversations, right? Like I just read Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus with one of my littler clients. She thought it was the most hilarious book ever. But we talked about like what is Pigeon feeling right now and how should he be reacting? And so you can have those conversations about like Pigeon's big feelings because gosh, he really does have them. And like what do you do? And that's what should Pigeon do? What could he do? What would help Pigeon get to his anger smaller? And to have those conversations even when they're that little. And sometimes when my kids were that little, I would even narrate stuff that I was doing. So I'm like, I'm so happy because this is going well or this is happening. I'm a little mad because this traffic is taking forever. Very simple things so that they understood like my mom has feelings, people have feelings, and people can do something about their feelings.
Yeah, that's a really important fact, and I think we always kind of well, at least to me, it seems like feelings negative feelings at least, are always, like, a problem.
Isn't that an interesting thing? Like, and I think there's part of like the way that we grew up. I know I grew up and anger was not allowed. Like, it was, you were suppressing it, you were denying it, you were ignoring it, and please don't show it because that's not okay. Versus what, like, and to sit with anger now, like, it's very hard for me to sit with when my kids get angry because my initial reaction still after doing this work for so long and having raised them for so long at this point is still to be like, oh, don't do that. But I stop myself and I'm like, it is okay for them to be angry. It is a reasonable emotion. And like, it's so you like, it's again, that self talk for myself, but every feeling is okay. And it's actually kind of freeing when I tell little kids this, especially like my little angry guys. Like, I don't, there are some kids who have like really big angry feelings, right? And they're like, I shouldn't feel this way. I'm like, why shouldn't you? Anger is, everybody feels angry. Everybody feels angry. It's what you do with anger that matters. If you are like pushing down your brother and knocking down his Lego tower, not okay. If you are saying, I feel mad, and you're scribbling on paper, that's allowed. Or you are crunching something or squeezing Play Doh, something that's going to get that anger out of you in a safe way, then let's do it. Anger is okay. And it's hard for us to sit with that. Anger is okay. Sadness is okay. You got to channel those emotions into positive energy, into something positive eventually.
How can we start to move that for people? Because if we're trying to help kids develop these coping skills and manage their emotions, but we're just not there ourselves, like, what do you think the first step is in accepting your own feeling?
I think to be able to do some reflection for yourself, and there's a lot of self reflection that you do. I've never reflected so much on my own stuff until I had children. I'll be honest. You can do that in a lot of different ways. You can do that through journaling. You can do that through like sentence prompts. You can do that through therapy if you need to. Like that is, these are all ways that if you're noticing something about the way that you are affected by certain emotions like anger is not okay, or and but you're full of rage, like something's up, then you have to sort of unpack that, like, why is that happening? What is this triggering in me? What can I do to like work through this and to sit and be okay with it? It's really about us as adults building our own emotional intelligence, understanding what emotions mean, and being able to cope with them ourselves. Again, back to coping skills for adults. Here we go.
I was just gonna say we're giving you a ton of content for this book that you're getting
I
ready
love
to
it.
write, right?
In your work, you talk a lot about social skills as well. So I'd love to hear more about that. Can you kind of give us an overview? And then how does that relate to coping skills? Like, what's the difference? How do they interact?
So it's so funny. So I actually started off when I started my like world on the web. I started off with Encourage Play, which is all about social skills through play. When I think about social skills, I think about it's really an interaction between people. So, how do you interact with somebody else? How do you interact in the group? How do you interact with adults? How do you interact with other children? So, that's really what it's all about, like making sure you can take turns, making sure that you know how to compromise, that you know how to wait patiently, all those sort of skills that are really helpful and beneficial in social interactions. And it actually led to the work of coping skills, because one of the things is when you are interacting with other people and you're not able to self-regulate, other kids are not going to want to hang out with you. It turns other kids off if you have really big feelings and really big emotions and you can't really handle them, like you sort of try and avoid the explosive kid, right? And that's, it doesn't feel good as the explosive kid because they're just like, I'm just having big emotions. I don't know what to do with them. And like, I'm having a hard time with it. And they definitely want to have friends. And so that's actually how coping skills started, is it came out of the work of social skills, but helping that self-regulation piece of social skills that you need to be able to work together. And that is, it's actually like when you are having little kids do pretend play, they actually learn self-regulation in that pretend play, because in order to keep the play going, you have to sort of put your own stuff to the side sometimes. If you are like, I want to be the car mechanic and I will only be the car mechanic and nobody else can be the car mechanic, then play stops and it's no longer fun, right? It's actually, it builds self-regulation to play. So I love social skills and I love teaching social skills through play.
The concept that jumped out at me the most in your Teaching Social Skills book was flexibility. So, can you explain why cognitive flexibility? Well, first of all, what is cognitive flexibility and why it matters? And how can we help kids develop this very important developmental skill?
Oh my gosh. Well, you know what? I have actually a client I'm working with right now who he can sometimes be a little bit rigid. And we have talked very candidly about this. It's helpful to be flexible because things will change, right? Things will change in the world. Like you can have a set schedule, but sometimes recess has to be changed around at school. Sometimes you can't have pizza on Fridays for dinner. Sometimes you can't go in a certain direction when you're like going into a place. Sometimes it's blocked, so you have to go in the outdoor. It honestly, real true example. And he's like, I don't want to, it's the outdoor, I can't go in. Like, but you can't go in that way. Like it's all blocked up. Like we have to go in that way. So to be able to sort of like deal with the things that the world throws at you, like the times where you have to learn how to be able to think differently and to change your plans. That's why it's so important to be flexible. Plus you can, you're thinking outside the box. It's actually a really great skill to have. And I love being able to teach it in lots of different ways. So I have with him actually, and with a lot of kids, I use a popsicle stick, a piece of yarn, and a pipe cleaner. So I talk about you don't want to be like super rigid like the popsicle stick. You don't want to be like super floppy like the yarn. You want to be like the pipe cleaner. You can wrap it around, you can bend it. It's still like you're not giving in all the time. You don't want to be somebody who's like letting everybody else do everything else and then you don't get a chance to say your own stuff. But you don't also want to be like my way or the highway. You want a balance. So we did that. And then we've recently been just watching videos, like even videos of like We Bare Bears, and Arthur, where people are not being flexible. So to have conversations around that, like, what do you think that brain was doing in this moment? What do you think he should have done? And then having really candid conversations about what it, like the positives that can come out of being flexible. Like if you want to try a new food, then you might discover that you really love tamales or you really love sushi, but maybe you decide you like sushi is not your thing. That's cool too, but you won't know until you try it.
I love describing flexibility in that way to kids of like what's in it for them. because I have a child who's very, very rigid, and we've come a long ways just with the sensory meltdowns and everything else because we continuously talk about these things and model these things. I've never thought of it that way though, is introducing it like, hey, look how beneficial being flexible can be for you. Because you said tamales with tacos, like he was so picky with food, and then he discovered tacos and he's like, "Where have these been all my life?" And I was like, "'Cause you were so picky and you wouldn't even try tacos, and now look." So I love tying that together. That's pretty cool. So as I'm listening to you, I can tell that you're just very passionate about, talking about stress, to kids and teens and talking about these and helping them be able to cope with these big feelings that they have in their body. So where do you see the biggest stressors are coming from for this population?
Oh gosh, I think there's a lot of pressure right now. For like the college process, I'm seeing a lot of teenagers actually with this like college process. Like I feel like it's like a weight on them that just like sort of shifts and like moves them down. And I'm like, what are we doing big picture wise here? So I feel like there's a lot of stress that happens around like, wanting to be successful, wanting to get good grades, wanting to do all the things that look great on college applications. And part of me is like, but what do you really actually like to do? I ask my like middle schoolers and high schoolers all the time, what do you do for fun? Like, what is it that you do? Not what you're going to put on your college resume, not what you're going to put on. Like, no, what is it fun that's something that you can do? And I'm always like, if you don't have something, we're gonna have to have some playtime because we need to figure something out where you can learn how to have that playtime. Like teenagers need play, little kids need play, middle kids need play. They all need play. It just looks different when they get older. So I am seeing a lot of stress from school, stress from college, and then the stress from like needing a certain appearance. Like is it am I meeting what would be considered Snapchat worthy or Instagram worthy?
Even probably not from social media, but also fitting into these boxes that we've created in school systems, in home lives. Because you're talking about with them, needing to go on this path of going to college. Well, maybe that's not even the path that they wanna go on. So it's all of the having to fit into this is what I should look like and how I should act, right? Is that kind of what you see too?
Yes, and it's frustrating to me because I'm like, you are so I always tell my kids this, like you have so many skills and strengths that you don't see because you're trying to be this other thing that somebody wants you to be. And I'm like, kind of throw that out the window. Let's start again. What do you want? And I appreciate the kids who are like, I love music, I love writing, I love poetry, I love rapping. And I'm like, bring it, show it, let's do this because that's like it can be a passion that is something that really helps you rest and recharge and re-energize, or it could be a career. Like either way, those are really good skills to build.
Absolutely. So what I'm hearing you say in all the examples you gave, it's really these teens seeking acceptance and relationship. They want to be thought well of, right? And if they can't get that through good grades from their parents, then they go to Snapchat and try to do it through appearance. But it's all the same motivating drivers that they need to be unconditionally accepted and like included. They need a sense of belonging. And if they don't have they'll just kind of keep escalating how they ask the world for that.
Yes, and I think that sense of belonging is it's so essential for them. Developmentally, it makes a lot of sense, but I think when you find that group of people who get you, who have similar interests to you, go for it. Join them, do the things like if that's drama, if that's D&D, if that whatever it is, if you want to watch anime and read manga all day, cool. There's other kids out there who love it too, so let's find you and like let's put you together. Like go to the library because they do a lot of that there. Like let's find those people that you have something in common with that you connect with, so you feel that bond with somebody else and you have that relationship. That's huge.
I would love to know because you say you ask all of your kids this, but what do you do for fun? Like, what do you find? I would love to. Has anyone asked you that lately?
Not lately.
She just writes books in her fun time.
Oh,
Yeah, write books.
actually, I writing is hard. Writing, like, I was talking to another author, and she's like, it just flows out of me. I'm like, that is not my experience. That is fine.
I've done it kicking and screaming. No, I'm kidding.
Some days it's easy, some days it's hard, but it's like, but that is like, it is good, and I like it's cathartic, but it's not necessarily fun. Like, it is good, but not fun. I love puzzles. I love gardening. I love taking walks. Those are things that I love. I love music, actually. I am a huge music fan. And like, if somebody listened to my phone and like listened to all the songs, to be like, what's wrong with you? Like, if you just put it on shuffle, people would be like, what is happening right now? It's like classical, Taylor Swift, BTS. Like, what is happening with you? But that's what it is. That's what I love. And so I get energy from music. I get energy from actually playing video games. I'm a gamer, but not like, I'm not like a Fortnite kind of gal. I don't play NBA 2K. Like, I play Animal Crossing. I play Stardew Valley. Like, I'm like picking fruit off trees and like taking care of my chickens. Like, that's that is what I do.
What I like what you said though is what I get energy from, and I think that's really important for us adults to see that we get energy from things and our kids get certain energy from things, and it might not be what you like, but to accept that and just allow them to run with what they're interested in. I really, really like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we should honor that. Like, my kids look at me like, "Are you really listening to BTS again?" And I'm like, "Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Get over it."
That's so funny. So I have a question about this. Like, I, for a long time, I guess Adrian's helping me come into my like playful self more. But I am just like so driven by productivity and almost like have lost the ability to enjoy something that's not productive. Do you see that? Am I normal? How can I change? I want to have more fun, but I just feel like I'm doing the thing that everyone is else is saying is fun, but like I'm just thinking like, when is this over so I can go work? Like I that's so broken and I want to fix it, but I don't know how to I want to be I guess what I'm saying is I want to be a more playful person for my kids. And I'm just kind of like in the messy middle of that journey. So what advice would you give me?
So first I would say to try and reframe play in your mind is not like, rest is actually part of productivity. Like, you, and that's actually what really helped me, because I also am like a type A. Like, I have a to-do list for home and for for work. Like, I have two different separate apps for work and home. So I'm that girl. But to be able to reframe rest as that is helping my productivity for the next day. So that actually has really helped me shift to be like, I'm doing something, but I'm resting. Like, so that's kind of a neat like trick that I've done. The other thing I would say is like, think back to your childhood. Like, what did you really love to do as a kid? What were the things that like brought you joy, made you laugh, the things that you enjoyed doing, like when you had downtime, when nobody was scheduling you and you were like, it was Christmas vacation or it was like summer? What were the things that you would do? What would make you happy? And like, maybe revisit those. I was talking to an expert, and she actually plays with dolls because like she's reparenting herself. Actually, she was talking about it, and she's like, I play. She's from the UK, so they have these like different other dolls. I think it's like the Barbie equivalent, but that's what she does. She like has a whole dollhouse, and she like, and I'm like, good for her. Good for her for doing that. Like, I got an easy bake oven as an adult. It's fine. I like really wanted one as a kid. And yes, did I bake with that ridiculous light bulb instead of using my big grown up oven? Yes, I did.
I love it.
I love that.
What I heard in there though was you said when someone wasn't scheduling your time. So Katie, do you think that is part of the thing? Because being a gymnast, your time was very scheduled. So I wonder if that's where it's tied to.
I've always had all of my time scheduled towards like a very intense productive goal, like something competitive or something I don't know. So I guess I just didn't have a lot of that. And then I have 4 older brothers
Ah,
who are all wonderful people, but it's like it was a lot of me watching them do stuff where it's like, "Let's talk about video games." Like, I grew up watching them play video games, and if I could get a turn, like, that would be great. So, like, should I, like, go get the Nintendo 64 007 version and just, like, play it? Should I beat that game because I never got to? Is that in me? Do I need to do that, Adrian? I don't know.
there's nothing wrong with that. I'm a like Nintendo fangirl all the way. Like, I one of my coping strategies over COVID is I got Animal Crossing. Like I stood in line with a mask to get the new Animal Crossing that came out in March 2020. And I played it for hours, y'all, hours. And it was like so rejuvenating. I wonder if it makes sense for you to then like kind of start to think about, well, what do I want to do? Like, what are the things like just in life? What do I want to do? Like, do I want to take a Zumba class? Do I want to go boxing? Do I want to go hiking? Do I like what are the things that would do I want to roller skate? Like, what is it that I want to do? Like, you can go down some rabbit holes on Instagram Reels. So
Mhm. I do, guys, actually secretly love Zumba. I love dancing super hard, like crazy hard, and that's just, like, not something you would expect from me, I guess. So I guess I feel like a little like, "Oh, like, the type of person I am shouldn't like that." I guess I'm, like, shoulding myself a little bit. And so it's like keeping myself like, Adrian, you mentioned the boxes we create for our kids. It's like, okay, now I carry that box and I keeping myself in it because I've kind of internalized some of those walls.
So, Janine, are you seeing the importance of this coping skills book for adults that you need to write? I just feel like there's so much value because it's really, I mean, we could teach kids all these things all day long, but if we can't tap into who we are and what we like, and, as adults working with kids, it's really, really hard for our kids to, really blossom into who they were created to be, right? I really like Zumba too. And I am one of those goofy people that I'm like, I, like, make all the faces in the mirrors. I love it so much. So I love that you love Zumba.
can I tell you something? I actually used to
Yes.
teach Zumba.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
That's amazing. Online Zumba class.
It was on my list of things that I've really wanted to do because I did like a show choir in high school and I loved it. I loved complicated dances and I love music. So it's like perfect. And I listen to like all sorts of inappropriate music, like so much Pitbull. It's outrageous. Like it's not, again, you look at my list and you're like, none of this is in English. I'm like, I know, it's fine. I love it. And so I started going to this Zumba class. I met up with, I'm still like really good friends with her. And she's like, you go to all these classes, you should teach. And I was like, what? I looked at her like, you are out of your mind. She's like, you know all the dances. You can teach it. And so I like got roped into it, but I was like, it was fun. It was so much fun.
That's awesome. I love it.
So cool. So we could talk about these things all day long. And so we are going to wrap up. We're running out of time. And we ask this question to all of our guests. So, who is someone in your life who has kindled your love of learning, your curiosity, your motivation to do all these amazing things?
So I would say it was my fourth and fifth grade teacher, Mrs. O'Neill. So she actually like we looped. I didn't know that was a thing, but like I didn't learn that till I was like in education. I was like, oh, that's what we did. We looped with her. But she was so wonderful because I loved the way that she sparked us. She was a phenomenal teacher. She taught us how to know the planets by singing. We did all sorts of cool projects with her. She made us feel like so seen. And I loved that. And I wanted to like, she just made me want to do well in school and and be able to do the things that I do. Like, she was so inspiring and so, like, just affirming to me. And like little me in fourth and fifth grade, who was like a ball of nerves. And she was like, you're really good at this. You should like probably chill out and like roll with the fact that you are really good. And I was like, oh, okay. I'd never like, she was just so like positive to me. And I was like, oh, so sometimes like her nice words like still live in my heart. So I love that.
Yeah, it's a lot of things that we've been talking about. It sounds like relationships really, really huge. She helped you feel like you belonged, and then play because you tell that's really, really important. Is and then she had like this playful spirit, in the classroom. I love it so much. So we thank you so much. This was such an amazing conversation. I just love your energy so much, and very thankful we got to meet you today. So thank you so much for coming on Kindled.
Thank you so much for having me. This was so much fun.
So that's it for today. We hope you enjoyed our conversation with Janine. Adrian, what was your biggest takeaway?
Oh my goodness. I think my biggest takeaway is coping skills don't have to be this thing where you have to plan out and have a list and follow them, but it's really just a way of life and a way of being. And that's really connected to, my favorite thing, play for sure. What about you?
I feel like I made a lot of progress in my journey towards becoming a more playful person. So I'm excited to do that work more.
I love it.
It was a great conversation. I learned so much. If you want to learn more from Janine, you can go to her website, www.copingskillsforkids.com, or you can find her podcast at www.janinehalloran.com.
Before we go, don't forget to subscribe to KindlED wherever you get your podcasts. Leave us a review, rate us, or share your favorite episode on social media and tag us at PrendaLearn. For more KindlED content, head on over to prenda.com/KindlED and subscribe to the KindlED newsletter.
And remember to submit your questions, challenges, concerns to us at podcast@prenda.com. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to keep kindling.